I like these vibes.
Dear esteemed student, I am delighted to inform you of your acceptance to Alfred Nobel Academy this autumn term. Should I use a British accent? I was never formally trained. I just have a mental illness, so this might actually be effective, but let's try. We're very impressed by your application, and we are assured that you... I know this sounds so stupid. I really gaslit myself into thinking that I had a good British accent. I don't. Let me act correctly. Hello everyone, and welcome to an especially spooky and especially creepy new day, new sleigh, and new video where I have something to say. I am your host, Kristen, and I have a deliciously brand new book I would like to share with you. I don't know why I said deliciously. That's not like a good description. The setup, as you might notice, is a little different. It's a little spooky because we are dealing with a particularly spooky kind of book right now. I also have a little Day of the Dead Target bird that I got to my mother's dismay. She hates that I collect these, but I love them. You may be saying to yourself, Kristen, it's March. We're not in October. What is happening? What are these vibes? Why did you bust out the Halloween decorations? What's going on? Well, let me tell you. As you may know, if you frequent my channel prior to this, I recently reviewed Ace of Spades by the one, the only Faridah Àbíké-Íyímídé, and I absolutely loved that book. It left me speechless. It literally shook me to my core. And after finishing that book and catching up with that author, I realized she had a brand new release coming out in March. And I thought to myself, I think that's fate because my birthday is in March, and it came out like it was really close. It was like, oh my God, thank you. Because this was like the most beautiful birthday present I could have ever gotten. Like, really, you shouldn't have, but thank you. I told myself, I absolutely have to read this book. And I did. And oh my God, I did. So what is this amazing book that I just read? Well, let me tell you, it is called Where Sleeping Girls Lie. And before I start this video, I do have to preface. This is the little trigger warning that comes at the beginning of the book, so I'm just going to read it straight from there. Where Sleeping Girls Lie is a work of fiction, but it deals with many real issues, including sexual assault, rape, suicide, and suicidal ideation, grief and death of family members, including parents. So if you are particularly sensitive to any of those topics, you may want to click off this video. But as I said in my review of The Bluest Eye, I don't think that I would say that you shouldn't read this book because despite it dealing with a lot of heavy topics, I think it's so incredibly important to read this book for what I'm going to get into today. Do whatever it is that you need to do to make yourself feel comfortable and safe. Take as many breaks as you need. Do whatever you do that makes you feel comfortable and secure. But I would definitely highly recommend reading this book despite a lot of those content warnings because, again, I just think that there's so much value and so much that we can gain from reading this book. And I would hate to think that, I would hate to make anyone uncomfortable or force anyone to push themselves past their comfort zone. But I think for a book like this, it's so incredibly worthwhile to read. So if you are a little bit more comfortable and you're okay and you're in an okay place where you can read a book like this, then definitely for sure do that. But again, if you cannot, it's totally okay. You do not have to read the book. But, just look at the cover art. There's other ways that you can participate in these conversations without reading the book. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's get into it. Okay. So because this is a newer release, I'm not going to stick to my normal format for these videos where I go deep into the plot and give a beat by beat synopsis of everything that happens because again, I want everyone to read this book. So I don't want to go into that and potentially discourage people from reading the book. So instead, I'm going to focus on the overall themes, the things that I loved about the book and stuff like that. So if you're hoping for a really in-depth analysis, I'm going to wait on that, okay? I'm not saying it's not coming because it's coming. Where Sleeping Girls Lie is a story about a young teenage girl named Shada Hussein. Let me give my other disclaimer right now. So normally when I do these videos, I usually listen to an audiobook in combination with reading the physical text of the book. And the biggest reason I was I have to use the audiobooks is because you did not know this about me, but I have to come clean. I have a horrible affliction where I chronically read characters' names incorrectly. And it's not to say oh yeah, that I'm just unfamiliar with certain names from certain regions. No, I will read quote unquote common names incorrectly. For example, when Divergent came out and I read Divergent and the movie hadn't come out and I hadn't listened to the audiobook, I was reading his name as Tobias. I know. That's my deep dark secret. In case you didn't know, it's Tobias. So for this book, I actually sat down and read the whole thing. I did not use an audiobook. I literally read it. And that was because Libby had the audiobook version of this on hold for 12 weeks. So I was not going to be able to listen to it in time to push out this video. With that being said, I'm going to say these names to the best of my ability. And thankfully, the author put in the pronunciation of Sade's name because I did read it as Sadie. And even worse than that, when I first saw it, I was like, no, Sadie is probably wrong. It's probably sad. This is my formal apology video. If I say any of these names wrongs, I'm so sorry. Burn me at the stake. I deserve it. I'm an awful human being. Anyway. So, Sade Hussein is a young teenage girl who recently lost her father to a heart attack. Her mother had unalived herself when she was very young, and now she finds herself an orphan. She was homeschooled for most of her life. She lived incredibly sheltered and under a very watchful gaze from her father, so now that he has passed away, she enrolls herself in a private academy known as Alfred Nobel Academy. And they shorten this to, I'm gonna spell it out, ANA, short for the school name. Now, I don't know if they physically say ANA when they're referencing it or if they're saying like Anna. So I'm just gonna say ANA. So once Sade starts at her new school, she is assigned to her house sister and her new roommate, Elizabeth Wang. This scares me more than anything that I'm saying these names wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Wang, right? Or is it Wong? After her very first day of starting at Alfred Nobel Academy, Elizabeth goes missing. Sade teams up with Elizabeth's best friend, Basil, and together they must uncover what really happened to Elizabeth. Despite the explanations of the school and many of the other students kind of dismissing her disappearance, they know that something is not right with Elizabeth. As they go deeper and deeper to discover what truly happened to her that night, they find themselves slowly uncovering the secrets that haunt the hallowed halls of Alfred Nobel Academy. First and foremost, I want to say that I am happy to announce that this book has single-handedly revived the genre of boarding school mystery suspense horror mystique. There's probably like an official name for like what this genre is. I just don't know. So I'm just going to refer to it as boarding school horror mystery suspense genre chic and other variations of that. So I'm so glad that this kind of genre has been revived in media and popular culture. That's the word. So I don't know about all of you, but I was personally very saddened when I realized that there was such like a vacuum, a void truly in popular culture of this specific kind of genre. So if you're looking for like a general like vibe of what this story kind of is, think like House of Anubis, think like Wednesday even for like a more recent kind of reference, okay? And you know, for all my Hispanos in the audience, this is definitely giving El Internado, which this is not specific to like Hispanics in general, because I think anyone that was in a Spanish class probably watched El Internado. If you know, you know. And I'm even boldly gonna mention like Pretty Little Liars, and I'll get into why. And I know it's kind of gross, but Harry Potter. And I say gross because obviously J.K. Rowling, she's very gross, she's very transphobic, and we don't appreciate that here. So let me give you the rundown of this specific genre and why I think it works so well for what this story was trying to achieve and what it did achieve. As a little backstory, in my senior year of college, I actually went on a study abroad trip to Paris. It was very cute, it was very fun. But let me just say, when you're in an environment, when you are going to school with the people that you also live with, and you're just constantly in an environment with the same people over and over and over again, the drama gets kicked up by 1,000. Because like drama in school is already like a thing, right? Like it's just, you know, it's a way of life. But it is so different when you also live with those people. And I only did it for 2 weeks. It was the most eventful 2 weeks of my life. So can you imagine what it must be like for teenagers as they are not only discovering themselves, their identity, but also like their bodies and understanding puberty and the changes they're going through? It's crazy, okay? So the stakes are already up to 1,000,000 when you're going into a story and the setting is a boarding school. That and the fact that these kids are rich. And let me just say, it's just so fun because when you don't have to worry about things like money, everything can be so much like, I guess the best way I can describe it is like camp. And I don't really understand what that word means, but I think it kind of fits. When the story opens up, Sade is driven to the school, right? And like she has her own driver and stuff. So she's an orphan now, but she has inherited all of her family's wealth, right? So she's it's such like a satisfying scene, and it really kind of sets up like what we're kind of in for, not only for our main character, but for the other people. Because she's like, first, like the driver pulls up, right? And she's like, okay, how much is it? And he's like, no, it's paid for already. It's paid for. And she's like, how much? And he's like, no. And she literally just takes out a wad from her purse and gives it to him. Like, that's literally queen behavior. And then she's like, can you move my stuff to my room? And he's like, yeah, sure. And she's like, but how much is it gonna be? And he's like, no. And she takes out another wad and just gives it to him. Because I think so often when we have stories like this, it's like from the main character is always like lower class, you know, they got in like on a merit scholarship or some kind of needs-based scholarship. They're immediately separated from all the other like people and characters that we meet in the story. But when Sade is introduced, we immediately recognize that she is on a level playing field with these other people, if not has an advantage against them. Homegirl rolls up to this school 4 weeks late for the beginning of the term, throwing out cash, like queen behavior. Also with just like this whole boarding school business, I think everything is just so extravagant inherently. Like when they're talking about the setting, all these buildings are very old, like the architecture, there's like marble, and everything is just very eloquent. And like just being in that presence, you're like, this is like high echelon society, right? Like it's a vibe. And then again, it just raises the stakes because like, I guess when you're in a normal high school setting and there's drama going on, like it stays there. You know what I mean? Like when you leave that school building, it doesn't necessarily follow you. Like you can go home and kind of like separate your home life from your school life and thus like your social life. But when it's a boarding school, the stakes are just so much higher because you never escape those people. It's just 24/7. You're with the same people over and over and over again. And then it's even higher stakes because these people are like the sons and daughters of the absolute height, the 1% of society. So anything you do, you're also playing not only into like the social cliques and just normal pressures that come with being in high school, but you're also playing into the politics of the adult world. And with these settings, it really blurs the lines between child, like adolescence, to adulthood. Like these people, these kids really take on adult roles because they're having to essentially take care of themselves and like, you know, manage themselves. And they're uniquely in a position where they're away from their parents and they're not necessarily as monitored, which you think like, oh, well, the teachers, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But in this specific genre, as we see, teachers can oftentimes be very like, you know, inattentive. They're not as on top of it. And kids can oftentimes get away and like figure out loopholes in the systems to do what they need to do. And especially because in this setting, again, these kids are a part of like the 1%. So we have a character like Francis Weber, who his stepfather is the headmaster. So he is allowed to get away with a lot of stuff in the story. Like it's wildly known that he abuses substances. He smokes cigarettes. He often leaves classes, and the teachers just kind of have to let him do whatever he wants because his father is the headmaster. So again, everything is just that much more heightened because you know that like the teachers and their supposed like positions of authority don't really matter when we're dealing with kids that have very powerful connections. And overall, like I just love this aesthetic of the story because they have like a Halloween/birthday ball halfway through the story. And I was gagging. I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, if they make this a TV show, I hope they spend half the budget on this party. So many things happen in the story where you're just like, you can't even question it because these kids are just that rich. It's literally balance unlimited with these children. Persephone gets a car. Like, she just has someone bring her a car that she just drives around. And you can't even question it and be like, that's unrealistic, because they're just rich. And we will just never understand. Us normal people will never understand what the rich do. Sade bought August literal professional high grade swimming goggles. I don't even want to know how much those were. Those were probably super expensive. But she, like, the only thing that bothered her was like, oh yeah, it was the only thing that would get here in time. What? Also, side note, but something that I did want to bring up. So obviously, I'm not British. I don't live in Europe. There's this like thing that comes up very frequently that like the playboy of the school, that being, what's his name? I was gonna say Judas. His name is not Judas. Jude Ripley. He has a reputation for like romancing the girls at the school, specifically that he would take them to Paris and break up with them the next day. And when they mentioned that, I was like, how is he affording to take these girls to Paris? Like, first of all, the plane fare, like that must be so expensive. A. B, they would probably have to fly first class, because like economy seating on an 8-hour flight is like, you can do it. I did it, but it's just like, I imagine that they probably wouldn't. That, and like, what girl is gonna agree to be on an 8-hour flight? And then I had to remind myself that they're in Europe and they could just take an hour train ride. To me personally, that's my Roman Empire. That's not fair. Why do I? For reference, it takes me an hour almost to get to work every day. There was a point where I wanted to go somewhere while I was in Paris, and it was faster to take 3 different trains, like transfer on 3 different lines, than it was to walk there. That's how frequent the trains come and how fast they are. That should be me holding your hand. That should be me. Anyway. But one of the most important things when we're talking about this specific genre in TV, you know, movies, books, all that good business, is one specific theme that I want to bring up right now. So normally, again, as I mentioned, the children in these stories take on an almost adult role because the adults that are actually in the story typically fail them. There is an overall theme of like corruption, something is not right, something is being hidden or swept under the rug when it comes to these boarding schools. There are secrets that are floating around, and oftentimes it's up to these kids that the story is about to get to the bottom of it. But even after the story ends, and even after the children take down whatever evil, villain, bad guy that was plaguing their school, there's always a hint that even though they might have defeated the villain this time, that the evil is not gone forever. Spoilers ahead, I guess. At the end of the show for Pretty Little Liars, even though the liars find out who A is, there's an implication that whatever happened to them with Allie and A is not over, because the cycle is again repeated with another group of girls. I know, kind of gross, but I'm going to bring up Harry Potter. In Harry Potter, through all the books, even though they defeat the evil in each respective book, I mean, the first one, it's, oh, they took down Voldemort the first time. Yay, great. He's not gone. The second one, oh, they slayed the basilisk. Everything is great. Everything's back to normal. Hogwarts, it's safe. But it's not. Every season in El Internado, they kind of like, they take down something, like something is achieved by the students, but there's still an overall overarching evil that they just can't seem to take down. Over and over in these kinds of stories, we see the same thing play out, where even though the main cast is able to save the day, defeat the villain, the evil itself is not gone. And now I'm going to get into a little bit more of the overall themes and messages of this book. So the title, Where Sleeping Girls Lie, is a play on another phrase called Let Sleeping Dogs Lie. I'm reading off the internet right now. The phrase is a request for a matter or incident to remain undiscussed or avoided, where addressing it might cause trouble. So essentially that phrase is like, you know, don't bring up like A, B, and C topic. You're just going to cause more trouble for yourself. Just let it be. Don't rock the boat. Don't do things. Just let it go, which is something that is an incredibly important topic and theme that we come back to time and time again in this book. So as I mentioned in the content warnings at the beginning of this video, this book talks very heavily on sexual assault and rape. This book is very centric on women and specifically how they deal with the trauma and grief when they go through such a traumatic experience in their life. And specifically, this book talks very heavily on something called rape culture. So there are so many things that go into the overall idea of rape culture, and I could only try and begin to describe what it is. So I'm going to use my resources. So on Google, rape culture is an environment in which rape is prevalent and in which sexual violence is normalized and excused in the media and popular culture. So minor spoilers for the book right now. So if you don't want to know, skip to X time in the video. Okay, are you ready? Okay, 3, 2, 1. We're getting into it. What Sade and her friends end up discovering is that one of the main secrets that haunt the hallowed halls of Alfred Nobel Academy is a secret ring, boys that belong to a group chat called the Fishermen. And in this group chat, they do a lot of very horrible things, talk about violence against women. They share private photos of their girlfriends or other women that did not consent to a lot of those photos being taken and spread around. And the messages that go on in this group chat can range from just surface level misogyny to explicit expressions of violence against women. And the main perpetrator of this ring is Jude Ripley. Jude Ripley has a history of using drugs, specifically the drug Rohypnol, which I believe is how you pronounce that word, which is commonly known as a date rape drug. He slips it into the drinks of the girls that he is interested in and then rapes them. And as we learn in the story, some of his victims have tried to come forward and lodge accusations against him. As we learn from Elizabeth, when she is raped by Jude, the headmaster essentially threatens her and tells her that if she comes forward and tries to go through with these allegations, that it would not reflect well on her. She could lose her scholarship, she could lose her social standing. It will not go good for her. This event launches Elizabeth into trying to uncover all the secrets of the Fishermen, try and figure out all the people that are associated with that group chat, and bring forward all this evidence that the headmaster cannot possibly ignore, all in an effort to make sure that her abuser and any other abusers that are affiliated with this group chat face the proper consequences for their actions. And at the end of the book, when it all comes out and they alert the local news stations, the school knows about it, everyone knows about Jude Ripley and what the other boys have been doing in this group chat, most of them get off scot-free. At the end of the book, even Sade says that the year has been a mixed bag of triumphs and losses, which again, I think goes back to this theme that I was talking about with this specific genre of storytelling with boarding schools, this suspense mystery, that there's an overarching evil that will never ever go away. And in this book, the overarching evil that we can never seem to get away from is rape culture. It's the patriarchy. It's the society that values promising young men over victims. In this story, over and over, we see how the adults in this situation consistently fail, specifically the women in this story. All the victims of Jude Ripley, all the people that, whether or not they chose to come forward, were unable to get the justice that they deserved, whether or not they sought out for justice or not, because of rape culture. This book not only talks about the trauma and all the harrowing aspects of being a woman, but it's really a testament to feminine rage. And I say feminine rage, not talking about those sounds on TikTok of girls screaming in movies and TV shows. I'm talking about the rage of being stuck in a system, in a cycle that you cannot change. Having to live your life proving over and over and desperately trying to make sure that people know that you are an equally deserving human being and that you deserve rights. Being a woman in this society can feel a lot like you're drowning, which is something that comes up very frequently in this book, this idea of drowning. There are frequent diary entries that come up over and over in the book with the title and anagram, I sleep, I drown, and disappear. This drowning feeling, the idea that you can't breathe, you can't come up for air, you are simply dying is what it feels like to be a woman. There is such a stigma when victims come forward, and although I'd like to believe that we've come a long way since centuries ago and that there is a lot more advocacy and resources for victims, I can also understand and recognize that in society, in the media, and just in the way we talk about victims, it's so easy for people to villainize them and constantly poke holes in these people. It comes up time and time again that if you are not the perfect victim, if you are not absolutely innocent, if you don't have proof, if this, and that no one will believe you. It's very easy for people in these positions to say, oh, maybe you're embarrassed. Maybe you regret the night before. Maybe you said yes, but now you don't remember. Maybe you gave him mixed signals. How is he supposed to know? Maybe you thought you said no, but you actually said yes. But you flirted with him, but you went to the party with him, but you went up to his room. So many things that people feel comfortable telling victims that's absolutely disgusting when we would not say those same things to men. And I'm saying men in this scenario not because I am in no way implying that abusers can only be men. In this specific scenario, when it is a male abuser and a female victim, I think that specific dynamic, the nuances of having a male abuser and a female victim are what is specifically, I feel, being examined in this story. Specifically, being a woman and being a victim of sexual assault and rape, and how it impacts not only the woman herself, but other victims that might have been victims from the same abuser. At the end of this story, as I previously mentioned, the evil is not gone. Most of the boys that were involved in that group chat were not expelled. They did not face any criminal charges for what they may or may not have done, leaving the victims, the women that had their photos shared without consent and or were sexually assaulted and raped, are left to essentially put themselves back together. Again, this is not something that is uncommon with this author. Ace of Spades did not end with racism being eradicated and everyone coming together and deciding that, hey, racism no longer exists. That's not how that story ended. And this story does not end with people saying, hey, women actually are equal and men will never ever abuse another woman again. That's not how this story ends. And even though when you leave the story, it might be easy to say that the boys won, Faridah Àbíké-Íyímídé is quick to say that they didn't win, because sometimes just surviving is winning. In a system that is so specifically designed to tear down women and hurt them and in many ways kill them, surviving in this system is winning. Surviving in spaces that were not designed for us, surviving in spaces and places with people that do not want us, is winning. A lot of the reasons I think that victims are dissuaded from coming forward and pressing charges is because lawyers or police officers or people in general will say that they may or may not win their case. And if they don't win the case, then it was essentially for nothing. But I think this idea of winning and losing is not something that can be applied to something as big as rape culture and sexual assault. Because I think that to say that someone wins just because their abuser is put away in prison or their abuser faces consequences, whether it's scholarships taken away, jobs lost, or whatever, is not something that can be necessarily applied in this situation. It's not fair to say that the only way that a victim can win is if their abuser is punished. I think victims win every day by waking up in the morning, by continuing to live life and continuing to persevere. But I think overall what this story is meant to leave us with is that we must celebrate the wins as they come. We must celebrate living as women. This society, the patriarchy, has been so uniquely designed to make sure that we fail, especially women of color. Overcoming that and succeeding, surviving, thriving, in spite of that, is a win. Allowing yourself to have happy moments, to have friends, and to feel love and to be loved is a win. Because unfortunately, and what we have to come to terms with when reading this book, is that we can't defeat it. It might sound pessimistic or grim or cynical, but it's the truth. We can't radically change this system overnight, but that's why it's so important that we have resources and we care and we show support all day, every day to victims. And most importantly, that we don't let sleeping dogs lie, that we continue to make sure that all of this is brought to light, of course, with victims' consent and making sure that that is actually what they want, but making sure that people face the consequences of their actions. Which, again, I think goes back to another topic of platonic relationships. Having someone to rely on, allowing yourself to feel love and be loved is something that is so crucial to the human experience. The human experience, I'm being specific, because it is so easy to let yourself spiral in situations like this where you feel like you can't change. You feel like you're drowning. You're drowning under these societal pressures, the things that you can't escape, like racism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, all these things that you feel are just too much, that are taking your air away. And that's why it's so important that we have platonic relationships and people that we can rely on to pull us out of the water when we feel like we're drowning. Sometimes I feel like when people are very active and vocal about the things that they care about, it's very easy to succumb to the despair of it all, even though you feel like you're screaming at the top of your lungs that no one will hear you. And to feel like even though every day you could go to a protest, you could donate to this and this company, you could advocate, you could do everything right, but still not make a single change. It's easy to succumb to that feeling. It's easy to feel like you can't do anything, that you're powerless. But I think, again, with this book, and something that is incredibly worthwhile to take with you once you finish, is that winning is something that is not easily defined, but the very basis, the first win above all, is surviving. Those were the main things I wanted to hit for this book. So I think that's it. I'm very proud of myself. I did not cry a single time while I was talking. Although I don't know if you could tell, but I kind of felt like it. I felt the tear jerks coming. Again, not that I think that crying is bad. I'm just an emotional person, and I really worry about my audio. Because when I cry, it's just like, it really kind of messes that up. I hope that you enjoyed my little analysis and me going into the nuances of like the boarding school genre and specifically how it ties into the themes that go along with this book. And if you agree, or if you have anything to add, or if you disagree, I mean, that's fine too. Just let me know in the comments. If you are a victim of sexual assault and or rape, please know that you are valid and your experience is valid, and there is no such thing as a perfect victim. Whatever you've gone through is absolutely traumatic, and I'm so sorry if you've had to go through that and if you've had to experience that. But please know that there are so many resources, there's so many people that you can rely on, and that just waking up or just, getting through the day is enough. You are winning as long as you are surviving. If you want a full in-depth synopsis of everything that goes on in this book, please let me know. Again, I think I might just wait a little bit just to make sure that like there's been enough time that passed and everyone can properly go out, buy the book, have a good time, read it, all that good stuff. So with that being said, I think we're done for today. I hope you liked my switch up. Hold on, let me show you my little cloud. Oh God. Isn't he a cutie? I hope you enjoyed my change in scenery and my little setup. I know I really broke the bank with my setup for today. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Anyway, yeah, that's it. Okay.